In the quiet moments before the world wakes up, there's a place where pain meets peace, where every breath feels like a prayer and grief stands still. We carry the weight of what was and search for meaning in the smallest things. And sometimes all it takes is one moment to remind us we're still here, still healing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I'm the host of this podcast. And yes, we are your number one podcast to bring you stories around death, down, and grief, all the messiness that comes in between with some amazing people out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, before we get started, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. Now, this is a live stream, so if you have any questions or comments for either myself or my guests, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. One other thing, this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, guys, help me welcome my next guest, Brian, to the show. Brian, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Glad to be on with you and your followers, and we want to be an encouragement to them today.
Well, I'm excited to have you up here. I'm excited. And you're on vacation, so that's, I felt really bad.
I was vacation.
Like, oh, no. Yeah, man. Traveling the world and visiting some amazing places. Now, before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Yeah, my name is Brian Kluth. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm married to a beautiful woman. I tell people we're a beautiful couple. She's beautiful, and I make us a couple. And her name is Mary Ellen. And we were both widowed in our early 50s. And then I started a singles ministry at a church in Denver, and people came from all over the Denver metro to those weekly events. And I got to meet her at that work, and we were able to marry 12 years ago now. And we have 4 children between the two of us. And we're known as Donkeys for Christ, little unusual title, but we literally travel the world, travel the country, and we say our goal is to get up every day and serve the Master. And in serving the Master, we're involved in a lot in Africa. We do RVing across the country. I do a lot of guest speaking in churches and conferences. Done a lot of things in my life, entrepreneur, CEO, different things, also pastor. But glad to be on the show today and be an encouragement to folks. Also have 4 children, 2 adopted, 1 natural born son and a stepdaughter. And on the grief journey, we've had some challenges with our kids that have been difficult, but we've seen God carry us through those times and help us in the midst of those very, very difficult seasons. Fortunately, things are much better today, but it's part of our story.
I love that. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. When we talk about the term grief, what are your thoughts on it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, when we think about the term grief, what are your thoughts on it? Because everybody has a different perception.
Yeah,
of grief.
I think grief generally is a season, a difficult season where you're dealing with loss, where things, there might be loss of a loved one, there might be loss of a career or a job or health, but anything where you're suffering lack and loss and disappointment, and you're trying to recalibrate and figure out your new normal because you know you're never going back, but you have to go forward. And so you're in that season of what was and what's becoming. And so you're navigating that season emotionally, family, financially, practically, sometimes the location, all kinds of things are happening in that season of grief and recovery, grief towards healing, grief towards a new life. So that's, and I would call it also, grief is a season where you're looking in the rearview mirror a lot, but you have to transition to looking at the windshield. There is a windshield in front of you. It's big and bright, and you can't cannot keep staring in the rearview mirror. You have to learn to glance back, but you've got to put your focus on the future. But it's a while to do that. It's a while to make those adjustments. But that's that season of going from what was to what is or what could be in the future.
Mhm. Now that leads me to a very like curious question, because I've been doing this work with men for about 6 years now. We're helping them navigate the world of grief, trauma, mental health, addiction, all of those different things. And I would tell you the biggest challenge is what you said, getting people to look out of the rear view and focus on the frontal road on the road that's in front of them, right? And I have a theory. And I could be wrong about this, but it's just something that I put together, even with myself. I think a lot of times we don't want to leave the rear view because we're afraid that we're leaving the people that we love behind, right? And sometimes we stutter step in moving forward because it's like, if I let this person go, does it make me a bad? Like, we have questions. Does it make me a bad person? Does it mean that I didn't care? All of these what ifs, what it could have, should have, right? And so it can be really difficult. And most men that I've met will find themselves in a moment to where they're too afraid to move forward. So what they do is that they create a world where they can become stagnant and hold on to the memories
Mhm.
that have come, that they have, and it becomes a safe place but it becomes safe for them, but very dangerous in a way because there's a lot of mental health issues. There's a lot of addiction that comes along with that, and a few other things. What are what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's true. It's a struggle that goes on, and I guess there's a couple of thoughts I had. So I'm coming at it from a Christian perspective, but what I've discovered is God's grace is greater than grief. So no matter how great the grief, God's grace can be greater than the grief. So that's one thing I would really say. Um, and then just the processing, the yeah, I'm just thinking back. The hardest thing for me in that loss of my wife was being a single dad to three teenagers. So the overwhelming task of daily life to now deal with three teenagers in school, that took a year. That took a solid year of everything I had plus more to just get through that year. It took me a year before I could even begin to think about the future. Anyway, so those are just things but I'm grateful for that. God's grace is greater than grief. And also the other thing that God did over time, I had sadness over losing my spouse, but he turned it to gladness for what I had. The reason that you're sad is because you had good times, okay? And because there were great memories and they were a special person. And so there's a lot of sadness when that's gone. But over time, I just had to be thankful that, hey, I did have those good times. And I went from sadness to gladness. And the gladness was, thank you, God, for the years we did have. She was diagnosed with cancer 21 years into our marriage. They said she'd be gone in a year. Unfortunately, she lived for 8 years. So God in his kindness gave us 8 years, not just 1 year. And so I was very grateful for that. But there's some people watching right now. You lost your spouse or a loved one in a moment, in a tragedy, in an accident or sickness. And so it's everyone's story is a bit different, but you do have to process your grief and move and ultimately move into the future.
I like that you said that, because processing grief can be a very difficult thing, especially for most men. We don't know what grief is, right? We don't even know. We don't know how to process our own emotions. So that comes with its own set of challenges. We don't understand that most of the majority of stuff that we experience during the grieving process is totally normal, because if it takes us outside of the roles of being a protector and a provider, it's like a foreign thing to us, right? And I have a term that I use. Grief to a man is like a foreign love language that no one speaks. right? And it's important, and and I want to talk more about how you got into the ministry work that you do and doing the support that you do for widowers and widows, things like that, because I find you know I find it fascinating that you was able to find the strength to not only after the loss of your spouse that you were still able to be a father, although as difficult as it was, and watching your children experience this loss as well, right? And that's not even including everyday or your everyday life, So I wanted my question pertaining to that would be, how did you help your kids navigate that loss while also navigating or processing your own grief?
Yeah, it was very, very difficult. I have three children. At the time they were 13, 15, 17. My 13-year-old did the best in that he turned to God in his grief, and his sadness, and in his loss. He memorized the book of James, and in particular chapter 1, which says, "Count it all joy, brethren, when you encounter various trials of many kinds," and goes on to talk about it'll develop perseverance and character in you and all of these things. So for him, he found strength in God. All right. So that was my son, 13-year-old at the time. My daughter was 15, and she just kind of checked out. She just kind of didn't know how to grapple with life, and basically failed everything. So she just completely started failing in school. She, her mother was a great help to her with schoolwork. She had some learning disabilities. Um, and so her mom helped her a lot when mom was gone. She just didn't know how to cope. I wasn't quite sure how to help her. I tried to work with the school system, but unfortunately they did not have the tools or the personnel or the heart to want to help her very well. So she really struggled. And then unfortunately, my oldest son, an adopted son, he really turned to drugs and alcohol. And he had a very, very difficult journey for many, many years. He's now in a good place, but he had years of just trying to, medicate his pain. A lot of people self-medicate. They've got pain, so it's drugs, it's alcohol, it's video games, it's, foolish behavior, whatever, it's spending. And so all three kids all dealt with it differently. And I was working as a dad to try to help them navigate. But it was a difficult journey. We ultimately moved after the first year. We realized we needed to make a move, and we moved from Colorado Springs to Denver. My kids were very active in those decision-making times. But when we got to the new school, unfortunately, things just got even worse. So we thought that they'd get better, but they continue to struggle.
I see that. I see both sides to that as well, because I've seen people move from place to place, and actually do a lot better. And I've seen people go the opposite way, just like you said as well. They can go to a new place, carry this along with them, and people not understanding. And the world, unfortunately, the world that we live in, there's a lack of empathy that goes along with it. So there's a lot of learning that needs to go along with that. So I have seen both sides of the coin of that. Now, when did you decide that you wanted to do support groups for those individuals who have lost their spouse?
Yeah, so I had the first year in Colorado Springs just trying to work with my kids. Then after a year, we moved to Denver, Colorado, a place called Highlands Ranch. And once I was up there, so in Colorado Springs, I was well known and respected in the community and my church and so forth. And everywhere I went, people said, "How are you? How are the kids? How are you? How are the kids?" So I was constantly being forced to look in the rearview mirror, and answer that question. And it was never an easy answer. It's hard. My kids are struggling. So it was just like, I need to go somewhere else where because the people were also grieving the loss of my wife. So I needed to go somewhere else where that people didn't even know my past, didn't know my wife. And so I could just be Brian as a new person. So anyway, I moved to Highlands Ranch, and then I began to go to churches and try to, okay, I'm in my middle 50s and I went to some of the larger churches and thought, well, maybe there's a singles ministry because I don't have any single friends. Everybody I knew is married. I mean, everybody I knew was married, no single friends. And a little side story, I got some tickets to Steve Martin comedy night, and I had front row seats. So I thought I want to take a date. I'm going to go on a date, but I didn't know anybody. I didn't know who to invite. So I contacted 3 or 4 people that were very well connected in the Denver area, and I said, "Do you know anybody, a single woman that I could take with me on this date, this nice date?" And not one of them gave me a name. And I was like, "Oh man!" So somebody said, "Well, take your son; he'll enjoy it." So instead of a nice date with a nice woman, I take my 14-year-old at that time, and I realized, okay, no one's going to help me meet anybody. I need to come up with a way to meet people. So went to the different churches in my area, and tried to have a single Sunday school class, singles ministry, whatever. And there just wasn't anything good going on. Either they were very small, very dysfunctional, some unusual people in some of the groups. Some of them were a bit of a meat market environment. And so it's like, I was struggling with that. But I went to one that had a group of, it was a large church, they had about 12 people in the group. Church is like 4,000, and they have 12 people, singles, 30s, 40s, 50s. So the gal in that group was a caterer, and I'm a speaker and an author. And I said, "Hey, why don't we try an experiment? Why don't we do a Tuesday night? You're a caterer. You make a dinner. We'll invite as many singles as we can. Tuesday night, do an hour for dinner, and then I'll teach for 45 minutes about singleness from the Bible, and then some interaction, icebreakers. But then will be 30 minutes of discussion. So it'll go from 6 to 8:30. So we'll do it as a 3-week test. So first week we had 30 people, which is almost triple what we're used to in the Sunday school class. Right. Next week we had 35. Then we had 45. Then someone said, "Well, can you add a week?" And then we had 50. And then someone said, "Can you add a month?" And then we had 60. And then we had 70. And within a number of months, we had 200 to 300 people every week coming up to 2 hours away. So, I was now in Denver. So they were coming from the mountain communities. They were coming from Colorado Springs. They were coming from Boulder. They were coming from eastern Colorado to come to this Tuesday night dinner, friendly dinner, Bible teaching, friendly discussion, getting to know people, making friends. And God just moved in that time. So God took my pain and turned it into gain, right? And he can do that for any of us. He can take our pain and he can turn it into gain. And so it was a very, very meaningful time. And I met my new wife in that group. The group was mainly for people kind of late 30s, 40s, 50s, and some into their 60s. And we called it single and single again. We didn't use the word divorced or widowed. Both of those words are hard words. You meet someone, you say you're divorced. If you meet a divorced person, if they say they're divorced, right away they're going to tell you how hard they tried to save their marriage, and then they'll tell you bad stuff about their spouse, usually, right?
Yeah.
So that's one dynamic. And that's not a friendly conversation. That's hard. Or they're widowed and you're like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." And then they want to tell the story of their, what happened. But when you say to someone they're single again, they're like, "Oh, okay." So if someone wants to ask, they can, but people are like single or single again. And that word was much more neutral. It's not loaded with emotional baggage. It's just, you might be single again because you broke up with a girlfriend or boyfriend you had for 3 years, or could be divorced, or could be you're widowed. But the word single again was a much softer word, so that we advertise for single and single again Christians, 30s to 50s plus, and people came from all over the place.
Wow. Now, wow, man, that is truly amazing, and thank you for that, right? Because of the simple fact of it is such a hard thing to navigate the loss of someone, whether it's a breakup or someone passing away,
Yeah.
right? And I always looked at it like, how do you take those steps after dealing with something like that, right? Because there's and when I say this, I speak from my own self. Um, it was always the fear that I would have to experience that loss again. And I've never experienced the loss of a spouse, but I'm speaking to one of my hardest ones, which happened to be my son. And it was like, how do you step and be with someone and and be present with them totally when if they do have kids, you have to deal with the fact of a couple of things. These kids aren't mine. You can easily take those away from me. So that's one fear that you will face, at least for me. Second one is, what happens if what happens if this person loses one of their children or all of their children, right? Then I have to, now I'm a part of that as well. And then when it came down to families and things like that, my motto was always, this is not my family, right? So I have no say so. How do you help individuals look at that fear, face it, and begin to develop steps in moving forward and finding the confidence to even say yes to the possibilities of being happy again?
Yeah, where I tell people, I said to love and be loved is a wonderful thing. To lose love is a really hard thing, but to get to love and be loved again is a miracle thing. It's a grace thing. Um, and again, some people are coming out of bad backgrounds, and it was a bad story and all of that. I did discover as I did do I did some online dating and connecting. Ultimately decided that wasn't for me. I needed to meet with real live people rather than just this online world. But I made the comment to somebody one time. I said, finding true love. I said everybody has baggage. Finding true love is to find someone where you're willing to help them unpack their bags. Okay, because we all got baggage. We all got stuff. And I remember I went on a number and I didn't go on dates. I would meet someone for coffee or I'd meet them for dinner. They would drive separately. I would drive separately. I didn't pick them up. There was no physical expectations in that world. When you're meeting someone at a coffee shop or dinner or lunch, you're just friends getting, new friends getting to know each other.
Mhm.
So you leave out the whole physical deal. But I remember there were a number of people, another number of gals that I was just like, as I sat there, I was like, okay, you have way more baggage than I could ever help unpack. And I learned in those interactions with women as I began to re-enter the dating world. I called it, there were some people that were one and done. One meal, one coffee, one time, and I had enough information to go, I'm done. So
Yeah.
some are a one and done. And I'm sure there might have been some women met me and were a one and done, right? But then there were some people that I called three and out, where okay, I did one and was like, well, there was something there, and I did a second, and I got to know them better, and by the third time, I asked them every question I could think of, and now we're just kind of almost the conversation stalling, and and like, okay, we don't have a lot to talk about, and so there is a place for chemistry, and after three there was no chemistry, but I always say character trumps chemistry, because you can get excited about somebody, but the character could be all wrong. But
Yeah.
anyway, so with my wife that I did marry, I call it joy sparking. The joy never stopped. Every time I was with her, every conversation, she was so special and so wonderful and so kind and so loving. And I just, that just kept going and rolling. And I even told her when I really wanted to start dating her, I said, you're kind of everything I would hope for, and you can send me away someday, but in the meantime, I would like to be in your life. I'd like to get to know you better. I'd like us to spend time together. But I definitely had some one and dones. I had some 3 and outs. But then with Mary Ellen, it went the distance. So.
Okay, I love that. I love that. Which leads me to my next question. You said, God has a way of turning your pain into gain, right? And I also have a motto too, turning your pain into purpose. And the way I've always lived, the way I've lived my life since then is staying aligned with that purpose, not being distracted by any sort of outside influences, but staying primarily, hey, this is what I need to do. This is what I'm here for, and I work every day to try to do the best that I can, to be the best that I can in what I do. Not trying to compete with nobody, but just trying to be better every day, a better human being, a better man, a better servant. And it gives me fulfillment in this world. Now there are other things that I do crave, but I also look at it like, is my purpose bigger than a craving? Or is it possible for them to work together? I've yet to discover that part yet, but I'm still working on it, So when we talk about how to turn your pain into purpose or turning your pain into gain, what are some of the things that people can do? I know, because it entails so much, grace, patience, forgiveness, accountability, trust is a huge thing as well. So how do you help people maneuver through that?
Yeah, I want to give an illustration. My wife's going to grab a solar lamp for me. But we do work in Africa, and doing work in Africa, and especially among the needy, we discovered that a lot of people don't have light. They don't have electricity. They don't have light, so they have to rely on a kerosene lamp or a candle for light, and it's a struggle, and that's dangerous and toxic, and there's all kinds of problems with it. And so what we found, I'm going to answer your question with this. What we found is if we give them a solar lamp, right? That looks like this. So here's the solar lamp. So it's got three levels of light. It's really bright. You can see this thing is really bright.
I love that.
Yeah, way better than a candle or kerosene lamp. Doesn't stink, doesn't smell, doesn't cost everything. It's free. You just charge it this way. And I tell people from a Christian perspective, I say, when you're without God, you're kind of like a kerosene lamp. You're trying to shine, but you're not doing so well. Your life stinks, or it's toxic, it's dangerous, you're suffering, it's dim and dark and all these problems. But when you come to know Jesus, he makes you a solar lamp. Your kerosene lamp life, that thing goes away. And with a solar lamp, all you have to do is one thing. You have to put it in the sun every day, all right? This will shine bright. You saw how bright it was shining. You have to put it in the sun. So I tell people, as a Christian, when you come to know Jesus, then you put yourself in the Bible, you put yourself in prayer every day. And I've done it every morning and every night for over 40 years. In the Bible and in prayer, 10, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes longer. But it's that time with God, and I'm looking for God to power me, right? And when I get up from that time, I go live my life. And no matter what I do with my family or my work or my neighbors or whatever, I'm shining. It doesn't matter where I go. So you have to lean in to this relationship with God and let him empower you. And he will make you bright. He will work in your life and take the pain and turn it into gain. So when I gathered those 100, 200, 300 singles, what was happening on Tuesday night? This was happening. When I talked, I was talking from the Bible. I was talking from God's love for me. Yes, I went through hurt and heartache and disappointment, but God was good, and I was able to shine in the lives of others. And many, many people got married out of that group. Many people went on to make great friendships. Many learned to get out of the rearview mirror and look at the windshield. because God empowered me every day. So great little illustration. And in Africa, we get a $10 donation, and we've helped over 100,000 people in Africa get the gift of a solar lamp, and we tell them the story of how God wants to use them for His purposes. The other thing we do with this thing is I take it and I throw it on the ground and I stomp on it, and I say, sometimes life is really hard, and even after I stomp on it, it keeps shining. So we tell people, you know what? God can shine through your life no matter how hard it gets. So hopefully that's an encouragement to people.
No, I love that. I love that. And as you was talking about it, it took me back to an incident. Um, and I'm going to share a little bit of this because before my hardest loss, um, I was the guy who needed to learn how to be a man, um, because I didn't know how to do that. I knew how to survive. I knew how to fight. I knew how to be a game maker. I knew how to survive in life. Period. Right. And so here I am now. I got this baby boy, and I also don't know how to be a father because, I mean, I was never present with the two girls that I had because of lifestyle choices. Right. And because my life was not a place for people. Let's just put it that way. If you wasn't doing the same things that I was doing, there was no way that you was going to survive. It's just crazy. And so, moving forward, when I stopped drinking and, I decided to no more alcohol, I turned to God. And I said, look, I don't have anyone else to turn to, right? The people that I go to my men's group with, what I'm saying, they just as messed up as me. We all trying to figure this thing out, And so, I did the one thing that made sense to me is that I turned and leaned into God and I said, look, I need some help. Right. And that's for most men, that's the hardest thing that you can ever admit, that you need help. And I did. I turned to him and said, God, I need some help. I don't know how to be a man. And I don't even know where to start. But I have this thing inside of me that I need to control. Because if not, I'm going to hurt some more people, because I'm too violent. I'm too violent. So I need some help. And what God had did is that, He set me along a path, and He gave me guidelines and instructions that I was able to absorb and follow and be obedient to, right? And it changed my whole entire life. Now I still didn't know how to be a father, right? And so now I got this 3-year-old kid, young boy, and I'm still going. I still don't. I'm still missing something. But what I didn't see is that He had already blessed me with my son. My son was the one who taught me how to be a father. So I was able to have those two things going for me. And I became very obedient. And when the loss happened, I didn't want to have nothing to do with God anymore. I was so angry with Him. I was like, my question was, why? Why would you do this to me? I did everything you asked me to do. I was obedient. I changed the way I talked. I changed the way I treated people. I walked the path, the straight and narrow. I walked it truthfully. Like there was no dating. That was just me and my son. I'm just trying to be a father, be a good man in the world. And when it happened, I felt betrayed. I felt like I felt that I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Like it was like God was trying to talk to me. I was like, why would I want to talk to you? Right? I confided in you. I gave you everything. And you want me to trust you again? No. And then shortly after that, I lost my mother. And I really went, it doesn't, how do you come back from that? Right? How do you come back from that? How do you gain trust from that? And I tell you, I mean, I don't recommend this to people, but just a little bit of step into the right direction, coming from a very dark place. I had lost everything. I had tried to take my life, and that's when God stepped in and said, "No, I cannot allow you to do that." And for the second time in my life, I understood what unconditional love was. And it wasn't from any outside entity. One came from my son, the other one came from God. And I began to, from there, it was a slow process of regaining trust, learning how to listen, learning how to be present and in the moment with what I was going through, but also acknowledging that I wasn't okay, right? And having to go through the emotions of the experience of grief, right? So when I say that, what are your thoughts and opinions on people who have gone that route and have pretty much lost their faith and trust?
Yeah, I think sometimes we we think bad things aren't supposed to happen.
Mhm.
When my wife got cancer, right? Loved God, walked with God, served God. My wife got cancer. But for some reason, my wife nor I ever said, well, why me? Why us? Why did this happen to us? We're doing everything right. It was, why not us? We live in a fallen, broken, sick, troubled world with disease and tragedy and hurt and heartache and disappointment and problems. And God never says we're not going to go through the fire.
Yeah.
All he ever promises is to go through the fire with us. So, so some people go, well, why me? Well, why not you? So you have to realize that no, count it all joy, brothers, when you encounter various trials of many kinds. For in the testing of your faith, this is a testing in your faith, right? When there's problems of many, not just a problem, many problems. Another place that says, rejoice always. Always? Pray without ceasing. Without ceasing? And everything give thanks. Everything give thanks. For this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. Romans 12, give your bodies as a living sacrifice. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you might not be conformed to this world, but you would be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So in the trials and in the tests and in the problems, I believe we don't necessarily give thanks for them, but we give thanks in the midst of them. And we give thanks that God is bigger. One of his names is he's the Most High. So take the problem, right? He's higher. Cancer, he's higher. Drug addiction, he's higher. Bankruptcy, he's higher. Tragedy, he's higher. So he's higher than anything and everything that this world can and will throw at us. And what we do is we discover that. I like to say faith. God wants us to live a life of faith. Faith. Fantastic adventures in trusting him, right? Fantastic adventures in trusting him. So even in the tough stuff, you trust. Even in the tough stuff, you walk with him. Even in the tough stuff, you turn to him, you turn to his word, and he carries you through it. Doesn't make it always disappear, but he's there with you, and he helps you in the midst of your weakness and struggle and pain and problems. So anyway, that's my experience, and I've gone through tough stuff, but I've seen God there with me in the midst of the tough stuff.
That's something that I can see now, looking back on life and looking at the path that I've had to walk. And I realized something. Most people go, "Oh, you've had freedom of choice to be able to do these things," and I went, no matter the choice that I made, I still ended up where I needed to be. Right? I just didn't understand it, and because it's really hard to see the path that you're on when you're walking. It's hard to see God's hands move in it when you're constantly being battered and beaten. Right? It's really hard to have faith when everything that tells you not to trust what's around you, right? And I think that's part of the process that you have to go through. And I think that's where our stories begin to make sense to other people, because it's so raw, it's so honest, right? Because you have to sit back and go, man, had I not gone through this, I wouldn't be doing this. And I think there's a trade-off, right? And you get to travel the world and do exactly what you're doing, helping people from across the world. And things like that. And I look at that and I go, man, that's a true blessing because you were able to turn this thing around and do something so big and so beautiful with it, right? And I want that for a lot of people. I do. I want that for so many people that I've encountered, that they are able to bask within that truthfulness, right? And extract the blessings that come along with it, but be patient enough to endure the process that you have to go through in order to be who you need to be, in order to serve the people that you're supposed to serve.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that for me, that's been a key proponent to it.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I was just going to mention to folks is all that teaching I did to those singles. It's available for free to everybody watching right now. So it's just healthycharity.org. And then there's a menu on the menu bar says gifts, or healthycharity.org/gifts. And it's called the Roadmap to a Brighter Future. And it's my video teachings and all my handouts and the discussion questions from that ministry. And there's things in there people can use. Like I think of Moses. He was single again, but not sidelined for God. Moses went through a divorce. He sent his wife away. He had a second marriage. So, so here's a guy that, his marriage didn't go so well, and God used him more than like anybody on the face of the earth in the history of the world, right? There's Moses. But he had some trouble in his marriage. He had trouble in his family. He had difficulties, right? He had disagreements with his brother and sister. They didn't like that he married because it was an interracial marriage, and that was a problem. But God used him, and so I just teach through the life of Daniel, the life of Moses, the life of Samson and Delilah. That one, 7 ways to avoid being blinded by love. God,
ain't that the truth?
Amnon and Tamar, 10 ways to know you're dating the wrong person. That was date rape. It was a date rape experience, Rebecca and Isaac. But I look at these people in the Bible and then pull out what can we learn today that's going to help us. So anyone watching, you can get that free, downloaded, and you can just read through the handout. It's all the verses, all the key points. You can watch the videos, but it's healthycharity.org/gifts. And then it's a roadmap for a brighter future for single and single again adults. But we want you to have that because God has answers for you and insights for you and instructions for you to help you navigate. And we also have it's a centerfold, the centerfold of 10, it's 10 phases of healthy relationships, friends with boundaries and blessings, not benefits. A lot of single people, you have no roadmap. You're out there doing stuff and hanging with people and bad behavior, bad choices, bad company, and you're just getting burned again and again. So we actually built out a plan on how you can start with friendships, move to a dating relationship, move into courtship and engagement and all of that, and what's appropriate at each level. Because God calls us to purity, sexual purity, whether we're married or whether we're single. We're called to sexual purity. So I walk people through on a chart and show them how to develop relationships in a way that no matter what happens with that relationship with another person from the opposite sex, if it stops, you're not burned. You're not bloodied, beaten, and burned. You're like, okay, you know what? We don't have a future together, but we enjoyed each other, we respected each other, and we're better for having known each other. So I built all of that out, and it's all free at healthycharity.org/gifts. I want people to have that because everyone watching, especially if you're single or single again, widowed, divorced, whatever, broken up from somebody, you need a roadmap to guide you into the future. And now thousands of people have used it all over the country and the world. So I want you to get that.
And you did send that to me, so it should. I do believe I put it in the YouTube channel. So if you guys want to go check that out, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of other resources there too. I have a
Yeah,
lot of financial information. There's retirement information, financial freedom information, all kinds of everything I've got is a gift. So it's all a gift for you, and you can use it. Those that they want to help our work in Africa, they're free to do something, but I give it all away freely to just help and bless people.
okay. I love that. I love that. Which leads me to my next question, right? Because when people are starting to step into that path again, right? To want to get back out there to explore the possibilities of being happy again,
Yes. Or for the first time.
or for the first time. I didn't think, and you put together a roadmap, but as you was talking about that, I said one thing that I've run across is the trust factor, right? And when I work with men, I ask these men to ask themselves a couple of questions. Do you trust yourself to do what's right? Do you trust the person that you're welcoming into your world? But more importantly, do they trust you? And then after that, where's your trust with God? Right? And I work with people who are not believers and as well as believers, people who have different belief systems and things like that. But so I just kind of switch the words around a little bit. And I just, for the most part, I go, do you trust yourself, and do you trust the person that you're welcoming into your life, and do they trust you? Right. And a lot of times people have the hardest time trying answering that. And I know I did. Because for me, trust is earned, right? I need to know that you're going to be around because I've been through too many bad ones, right? You know what I'm saying? Or interesting ones. I'm not going to say bad because all of them had their perks. But when you look at it, they all ended up the same way. And it's like, do I trust myself to do the right thing? Or is this person worthy enough of my trust to allow them into my world? Because once you get in here, there's a sense of loyalty that comes along with that as well. Loyalty and respect. That means that I have to trust you to be vulnerable with me, right? And I'm a 6'4", 300-pound guy. So you would probably look at me and go, yeah, right, But I often, and this is what I hear a lot of men say, I just need you to be gentle with me as I learn to navigate this. Have some grace for me, have some patience for me, because there are all of these things I don't know. Now, what are your thoughts and opinions on that?
Well, there's a couple things. As I tell people, you need to know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And someone challenged me to start writing down what I was looking for as I began to date a little bit. Mm-hmm. I started to realize there's things that were important to me. I started writing down a list. So you can't find what you're not looking for, but you also need to become what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's okay. I want a good woman. All right. Am I a good man? I want a woman I can trust. Am I a man you can trust? I want someone who's faithful. Am I faithful? I want someone who's fun. Okay, am I fun? I want someone who's active. Am I active? So you got to be you got to become what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. But you also need to know what you're looking for. Now, in my case, it became I began to write down a lot of things because I remember. So, like, to me, someone who's a strong Christian was important. So I'd meet a gal, and so I'd have coffee with her. So, well, so you're a Christian? Oh yeah, I'm a Christian. So where do you go to church? What do you mean? I'm like, well, where do you go to church? And she's like, well, I go to lots of churches. Excuse me? And she'd be like, well, I'll wake up, and a lot of Sundays I don't go, but some Sundays I do. When I wake up, I decide which one I want to go to. Okay. Okay. If a woman doesn't even know the church she goes to, that's not a Christian woman I want. If I said, well, do you ever read your Bible? Well, no, I don't read it, but I have it. It's pink, and it's got a little cross on it, and it steps on the shelf. Okay. I'm not looking for a woman with a pink Bible with a cross on it and the shelf. I wanted a woman that would read her Bible every day. So I began to just write down things like that, knows where she goes to church, reads her Bible. Different, likes to be active. In my case, likes to be generous. I'm a generous person, so I want a wife who's generous. And so I began to write down things, and it got to a list of 60 things.
Wow.
60. Okay, so I called it my ridiculous. All right, this is ridiculous, God. But I was like, God, okay, this is Jello on the wall. It was just up to me. I love all this in a woman. Now I know there's no woman like that in the whole wide world, but I just wrote down what was important to me. And some again likes to travel, likes to bike, likes to hike, likes to ski, whatever I wrote down. When I met Mary Ellen, and as I spent a few weeks with her, I discovered she was everything on the list, all 60. So after about 2 weeks in, I took her, we went to Waffle House, and I said, I'm not trying to freak you out, but I want to show you something. I said, I've been writing down, if I ever can remarry again, what would be the kind of woman I'd want? And I said, I'm going to show you this list, because I said, I think you're everything on this list. And so I gave it to her, and I said, now you take it home and you look it over, and if you're wrong, if I'm reading you wrong and this isn't you, then you let me know. But I think it's you. And she took it home, and she shared it with a roommate, and her friend read it and said, "Oh, that's you, Mary Ellen." All 60. So what I said to her was, I just want you to know, I want to get to know you better. I'd like to be in a relationship with you, get to know you better. I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm not going to stalk you. But I want to stay in your world and stay in your life. And maybe someday we'll even have a future together. But in the meantime, I'm not going to go anywhere, because why would I go anywhere else? Why would I look anywhere else than right here? Because everything I would hope and would want is who you are. So let's see where this goes. And that was a little much for her. She wasn't wanting to date me. She wasn't interested in dating me, but she graciously allowed me to begin to get to know her better, spend time together. But so I knew what I wanted or hoped for and prayed for, but I also had to be that person. So you got to know what you're looking for, but you got to be what you're looking for. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. It does, because as you was talking about that, I started thinking about something that I learned as a young man growing up. And my grandmother used to always tell me, she goes, "Boy, you need to learn the fine art of courtship." And and as a little boy, I was, what is courtship? And it describes everything that you just said. Take time to get to know this person. Without any sort of expectations, without any sort of physical expectations and things like that. Just take the time to become their friend. Find out their do's and don'ts. Find out their boundaries. Find out what they like and what they don't like. Things like that. And my grandmother had said something to me that I totally didn't pay attention to as I got older. And it really dawned on me. She goes, when you get the chance to get to know someone, you may find that you don't even like this person like that, right? You may find that you just are really good friends. You may find that, there's nothing there. And sometimes you may find that there is something there. But it's the patience and the grace that comes along with that, of getting to get to know someone, especially, when I deal with men and they're struggling with trying to figure out the steps of moving forward, especially those men who have dealt with addiction and traumas and things like that, most people don't know what their worth is, right? Because they once say, for instance, I had a client, and I still have this client. The client was an addict, and he destroyed a lot of lives from his choices, things like that. But he did get better. He had to go back and he had to ask for forgiveness, things like that. But the damage was already done. And so what ended up happening is that so many people was telling him that he was worthless, even after he got himself together. And so it became his truth. And so moving forward, he was going, I'm not even worth it. Why would someone want to waste the time on me? Why would someone give me the opportunity to show them that I'm not a bad person instead of looking at themselves and going, I am worth it, right? And I say that to say this because I used to be that person too. I used to go, I'm not worth it. I'm not worth your time, right? Because I lived after survival. I lived in fear that that people was always going to leave me, right? And so it took me a long time to be able to maneuver through that aspect and go, it doesn't matter if anyone leaves me or not, I still got me.
No.
Right. And that's how I've lived it until I realized that it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. And it took someone really special to come in and say, I'm still walking with you.
Yeah.
I still want to walk with you. And to that person, if they're out there listening, I want to say thank you for that, and still being there with me.
I think addiction. With my son, went through all that. I always say to him, Josh, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything.
For everything.
And to learn to move from that, I'm going to give up one thing, that addiction, that I might gain relationships and love and value and productivity and a meaningful life. And I thank God for the path that God put you on to, that the road to recovery, and that you put that addiction in the rearview mirror and began to live a whole new life. And God's brought other people into your life. And even what you're doing with this, you turned your pain into gain. This program right now is taking all that you went through and is using it to help others. That's amazing. So Tony, thank you.
Oh man, thank you as well. And with that being said, we've had a few people tune in on Instagram. Thank you guys for tuning in. A lot of the other people tuning in as well. As we begin to wrap up this episode of the Let's Talk About It podcast, I want to say first and foremost, thank you guys for tuning in. And if it's your first time tuning in, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And if you know anyone who can benefit from the conversation that we have, do me a favor, share this along with them. This is a growing podcast. We're reaching more people. Be a part of the movement, be a part of the conversations. Let's normalize it. And with that being said, Brian, I want to say first and foremost, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your journey and your work with us. Such magnificent work. And so, which leads me to a few more questions before I let you go. My next question would be, how can people find you?
Yeah, they can just go to healthycharity.org is one way to get hold of me, and then get those free resources I meant, healthycharity.org/gifts, but my contact information is there. That's probably the best way. My phone number is there, my email is there, just healthycharity.org/gifts.
Okay. And my next question would be, if Brian had a superpower, what would it be?
Superpower, what would it be? Well, I do believe that God has given me a supernatural power, and that's the gift of faith. Gift of faith is the ability to see things in the future that God desires that don't exist currently, and I build and I work my life towards those things, and they become reality. So the singles ministry didn't exist. There was nothing available in a city of 3 million people that was worth my time or going to. And by faith, we built the singles ministry. The work in Africa didn't exist. And by faith, we built a building, and girls got an education, and we visited people and saw the problems with poverty. And now there's a ministry that's helped over 100,000 people. So God has given me a supernatural gift of faith, that I see things come to life that He puts in my spirit, and that's amazing, and I thank God for it.
Love that. I love that. And so my last question would be, if you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
Best thing is my resources. Yeah, don't please, for your sake. This conversation today is just a spark. It's just a spark to say there's more. I tell people, it's not what I say and what you hear that's going to matter. It's what you go get with what I give you or offer to you. So go to healthycharity.org/gifts. That's where the work's going to be done. That's where the victory is going to come. That's where the transformation and the life change is going to happen. When you go get the God's roadmap, or you go get the financial freedom, or you go get the God is your provider, that that's what's going to bring transformation that you need, and the help and guidance you need, and the Word of God that you need. What I leave with you is gifts that are all free for the taking and for the sharing. Some of you might just say, "Well, I want this for friends." Well, you take it and share it with friends. So.
Love that. And again, I do have that information. It is in the YouTube channel. You guys go there and check it out. And with that being said, Brian, again, thank you for being on the show today, man. I don't want to hold you up too much because I know you're on vacation. I appreciate you taking the time out to come on and share your work and your story with us. For everyone else, thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to wrap this one up. You guys already know we do a podcast every day. So if you looking for some great stories, tune in tomorrow. Go back and check out some past ones. We got something for everyone, but the podcast serves another purpose as well. So if you're looking for resources, go back there and check out some of the stories. Find somebody that you can connect with them, get the help and the support that you deserve and need, and connect with people that are out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. They're heart-centered and they really care about you. And with that being said, we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to see you guys in the next one. You guys have an amazing day. Love you. Mwah. And we're out.
Go shine.
Go shine. Go shine. I love it.
All right. God bless.